On this Saturday night, Western wildfires.
We're declaring a nationwide evacuation.
The massive blazes now threatening multiple communities in Western Canada.
There's a lot of nervousness, there's a lot of stress, a lot of people being on edge.
How the situation could escalate in the coming days. Immigration irritant.
The Americans are irritated. We better get on our horse and figure it out.
Why Washington isn't happy with Ottawa's new rules for Mexican travelers.
It doesn't really address the core of the problem.
Olympic politics. Will the Summer Games be overshadowed by global conflicts? Plus, rescued at sea.
The entire province is breathing a collective sigh of relief, an incredibly positive outcome.
7 fishermen missing for days in the Atlantic have an emotional homecoming.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. After a relatively slow start to the wildfire season, the situation in Western Canada is now heating up. Temperatures are soaring across much of the region, fueling dozens of fires and putting thousands at risk. And this is making matters worse. A lingering heat wave blanketing almost half the country. Daytime highs are expected to climb into the mid to high 30s in parts of BC, Alberta and Saskatchewan, with temperatures pushing the 40-degree mark in some communities. British Columbia, currently the epicenter of Canada's wildfire fight, has more than 300 wildfires burning today. More than half are considered out of control, with around 80 starting in just the past day. The most concerning are in the province's central interior and southeast, where at least 3 wildfires are now posing a threat to public safety. Catherine Urquhart begins our coverage tonight with the escalating wildfire emergency in Western Canada.
Throughout the night, flames continued to devour the hillside between Ashcroft and Spence's Bridge in central BC. Dozens of homes have been evacuated, along with 2 long-term care facilities. Hundreds of others remain on evacuation alert.
Last night when I got home, I started packing valuable keepsakes into a box.
An undetermined number of structures have been lost to the Shetland Creek fire, which covers more than 13,000 hectares.
There's a lot of nervousness, there's a lot of stress, a lot of people being on edge.
An evacuation order has also been issued in the central Kootenay, north of Nelson, where BC wildfire crews are also on the ground. Just another one of the many fires sparked in recent weeks.
More than 2 weeks of a heat wave across BC, and that's continuing today. And then we've had thunder showers and thunderstorms over the past few days, and that's landing in very, very dry forest fuels.
Thick smoke is impacting those with health issues, and drivers in the area are being warned to expect road closures. In Alberta, wildfires are also impacting air quality. The air in Edmonton is now rated very high risk. Approximately 150 wildfires are burning in the province, including in Jonvier, in northern Alberta, and in Jasper National Park. A new evacuation order has just been issued for John Doerr Prairie and Fox Lake.
We're declaring a nationwide evacuation. The fire that took a large run last night is now right above John Doerr at approximately 7.5 to 8 kilometers away.
Firefighters from across the country and around the world are now assisting local crews as this wildfire season continues to worsen. Catherine Urquhart, Global News, Vancouver.
As Catherine mentioned, the Shetland Creek fire in BC's central interior is one of the most dangerous currently burning in the province. Our Aaron McArthur is in the BC interior for us tonight. So Aaron, what's the latest?
Jeff, we're still in the middle of an active fire zone here. We're just off Highway 1 between Spence's Bridge and Cache Creek, and the fire burning just a couple of 100 meters away. We're so close we can hear the crackle of the flames. It is hot today, in the mid-30s. The wind is starting to pick up this afternoon, and there is a danger that this fire could make another run towards population. There has already been property loss. In the hills behind me, there are several rural properties as well as homes belonging to members of the Cooks Ferry First Nations. The damage to those structures has not been confirmed, but BC Wildfire says an assessment could come as early as Sunday, but nothing will happen until it is safe to put people on the ground. Several dozen people have been put on evacuation order here in this corridor. There are hundreds more that are on evacuation alert. People have been told to pack what they can and be ready to go at a moment's notice. Very much a sense of apprehension here amongst people who remember what it's like to be evacuated and don't want to face it again. Jeff.
All right, Aaron McArthur near the town of Cache Creek, BC tonight. Thanks, Aaron. And some much-needed good news regarding wildfires on Canada's east coast. Thousands from Labrador City who were forced from their homes over a week ago will now be able to return over the next couple of days.
We're in the good position today to be able to partially lift the evacuation order. Over the last few days, we've been fortunate enough to have boots on the ground, combined with good weather and good fire suppression activity from the air with our water bombers.
The Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador says the wildfire near Labrador City is not entirely extinguished, but it is now under control. Almost 10,000 people were forced to flee last Friday. Essential workers and their families will be the first allowed back, with plans for the rest to return on Monday afternoon. And it's been a dry summer in another sense for many people in Ontario. Despite some last-minute delays, the two-week strike by Ontario's liquor store employees now appears to be over. Most alcohol in the province can only be purchased through government-run stores. Sean O'Shea has the latest details and reaction.
In the heart of this Toronto tourist area, visitors to the city enjoy a hot summer's day. What they haven't been able to do for the last 2 weeks is buy alcohol from the government-run liquor store, the LCBO, because its workers have been on strike.
That little strike affects so many people, but it's for a reason. There's a good reason.
A strike finally settled Saturday morning, although stores remain closed for now. Did you miss the LCBO being closed?
Yes, I have.
There'd never been a strike in the LCBO's 97-year history. Was the strike worth it?
Absolutely. I think, on so many levels.
I think everybody got a little something here. There wasn't an overall big loser in the picture.
The union, representing 9,000 liquor store workers, fought against growing privatization of alcohol sales in supermarkets, gas stations, and convenience stores. It argued it would mean fewer jobs and reduce provincial income. The government wouldn't back down from a plan to sell ready-to-drink alcohol beverages outside the LCBO stores.
RTD is off the table. Let me be very clear. It's done. It's gone. That ship has sailed. It's halfway across Lake Ontario.
It was very silly for them to go on strike, and I think it's very nice that you can get wine and beer in the local stores.
The union says it won job security guarantees.
That all 680 of the current LCBO locations remain open, that the agency stores are capped at the number they are now.
And a more than 7% wage increase over 3 years.
We've also added 1,000 new jobs, permanent part-time jobs. We've added 60 more jobs in the warehouses. These are incredible gains for our workers.
I'll give that bargaining chip up, but I'll do it once I get a whole lot of other things. And they got a whole lot of other things.
For bar and restaurant owners who said the strike was making it hard for them to make money, the end is welcomed.
Yes, I think a lot of people are happy, especially this time of year.
The tentative agreement is now in the hands of union members. They'll vote all weekend. If the deal is approved, they'll be back to work on Monday, with LCBO stores reopening Tuesday morning. Jeff.
Sean O'Shea in Toronto. Thanks, Sean. Hospitals, banks, and airlines around the world are still recovering from that massive IT outage. Only Microsoft systems were affected, and the tech giant is now revealing how many devices went down. 8.5 million. That is believed to be the largest cyber outage in history, and some travelers are still stranded. Airports are slowly rescheduling flights. As of this morning, around 20% of flights out of Canada were delayed. The culprit? Some bad code in a software update from cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike on Thursday evening. A fix has since been distributed. And there's more potential bad news for travelers, specifically those going to Disneyland. Disney employees in California have voted overwhelmingly to strike. More than 14,000 workers could walk off the job, though there's no specific strike dates yet. They want higher wages and safer working conditions. Contract negotiations are set to resume on Monday. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is back on the campaign trail today, 1 week after he was nearly assassinated in Pennsylvania. Trump held his first public rally since last week's attack and after officially accepting the Republican presidential nomination. It's also the first time he's holding one together with his new running mate, J.D. Vance. The Ohio senator, once a staunch critic of Trump, is now aiming to win the vice presidency. Back here in Canada, documents obtained by Global News are shedding light on the federal government's recent decision to decrease the number of temporary immigrants. That included the return of a visa requirement for Mexican nationals after a surge of asylum claims from that country. Taria Isri explains how that move followed political pressure from south of the border.
For years, Mexican travelers did not need a visa to come to Canada. But that changed after Ottawa faced calls from provinces and Washington to reverse course and curb the number of asylum seekers from Mexico.
The United States has started to put pressure. That is likely, the last straw.
Briefing notes from last January prepared for Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc for his meeting with U.S. Ambassador to Canada David Cohen describe the frustration within the Biden administration. Mexican nationals entering Canada, subsequently attempting to enter the U.S. illegally, remains a bilateral irritant. Canada shares U.S. concerns regarding abuse of visa-free travel by Mexican passport holders.
If the Americans are irritated, we better get on our horse and figure it out.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau lifted the visa requirement in 2016.
This move will make it easier for our Mexican friends to visit Canada.
From then onwards, the number of Mexican asylum seekers to Canada soared, reaching a record high of 24,000 last year, while the U.S. also saw an increase at its northern border.
These are migrants, others who are trying to cross the border from Canada into the United States. And that number has gone up fairly dramatically.
It pales in comparison to the crisis at the U.S. southern border. But American officials warned organized crime rings were using Canada as a backdoor to enter the U.S. and exploit vulnerable people fleeing poverty and violence.
In Canada, from our investigations across the country, that there is Mexican organized crime involved in this.
Last February, the government reversed its 2016 decision.
A change was needed.
Reinstating the visa requirement for Mexican nationals.
This is an easy thing for governments to do, but it doesn't really address the core of the problem, which is the criminal networks.
A spokesperson for the Immigration Department did not answer when asked how much U.S. concerns factored into Canada's decision, but did say since Canada reimposed the visa requirement, asylum claims from Mexican nationals, particularly at Canadian airports, has decreased significantly. Jeff?
Taria Isri in Montreal. Thanks, Taria. Tourism hotspots coming up. Sweltering heat hits some of Europe's most popular destinations. Welcome back. The Israeli Air Force attacked Houthis in Yemen, striking a major port and reigniting fears that the Gaza conflict could spread. This is the aftermath of the attack on a Houthi-controlled port in western Yemen. Israel says it struck military targets, and local reports claim it was an oil facility and that some people were killed, though it did not say how many. Israel says it's retaliation for hundreds of attacks, including this Houthi drone strike on Tel Aviv on Friday. Leaders of the Iran-backed group promised what they called an effective response. Most of Central and Southern Europe is locked in a heat wave. Temperatures peaked at 44 degrees in parts of Spain today, and it was nearly as sweltering in other tourist hotspots like Italy, Greece, and Croatia. Nithu Garcha looks at how people are adjusting to this extreme summer heat.
In Rome, ancient history met modern-day heat as tourists sought refuge from scorching temperatures by going underground.
It's very oppressive and very difficult to see Rome.
Europe has been sweltering under an unprecedented heat wave this week, with temperatures soaring to record highs in some regions. For this veteran food delivery driver in Athens, earning a living has become an endurance test.
The temperatures are really huge. Even your skin burns. You sweat, your eyes hurt, you become very tired, really exhausted.
Meanwhile, in Croatia, tourists and locals flock to the Adriatic Sea, where temperatures have hit record highs.
The whole Adriatic is about 5 degrees warmer than the average in this part of the year. But there are also other species which are cold sea species. So basically they will get into the problems. You know, they might disappear in a few decades because the ocean will be too warm for them.
The days we've been here, really hot, maybe too hot for us, what we are used to.
In Serbia, locals say the Rusanda Salt Lake in Melenci has dried out for the first time.
This is scary how warm it is, really scary.
Such heat waves would almost not exist if it were not for climate change.
In Belgrade, temperatures shattered records dating back over a century. In Spain, they work at sunrise with extreme heat triggering a ban on some outdoor work in the afternoons. Communities across Europe have found creative ways to cope with the heat amid growing concerns over climate change. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
In China, at least 12 people have died after floods and torrential rains led to the collapse of a highway bridge. It happened Friday evening in the northeastern Shaanxi province. Chinese media reports that more than 30 people are also missing after a section of the bridge fell into a river below, along with more than 20 vehicles. Hundreds of rescuers, as well as dozens of vehicles and drones, have now been dispatched for search and rescue. This as severe floods and heavy rainfall have also been battering northern and central China since early this week. Mixing sports and politics still ahead. Countries at war prepare to compete at the Paris Olympics. The Olympic torch relay continued today with some aquatic segments. Torchbearers took the flame down the whitewater rafting course, then out on a rowing shell. The journey continues all week through Paris and Olympic venues, and the Summer Games begin next Friday with the opening ceremonies. These Olympic Games take place under the shadow of global conflict. Some of the competing nations are actually at war with each other. Nathaniel Dove looks at the difficult balance between sports and politics.
The Olympic Games are just days away. The backdrop this year is violence in Ukraine and Gaza.
What we are asking for right now is for Israel not to participate to the Olympic Games.
Both fights have galvanized people around the world.
I think it's absolutely unfair and doesn't come along with the Olympic spirit.
Some Ukrainians also calling for Russian athletes to be barred from the Games.
It's connected deeply to national identity, right? It's always been used in political ways.
A researcher says the Olympics mixing sports and politics is inevitable.
As a space for messages, for the idea of arguments and positions to be staked out in a very visible way, there's nothing bigger than the Olympic Games.
The U.S. boycotted the 1980 Moscow Games to protest the Soviet Union invading Afghanistan. In 1972, Palestinian terrorists kidnapped and killed 11 Israeli Olympians. French elite forces formed shortly after that attack. They're training for the worst. The Paris Games security head says they've been preparing for 5 years.
We have an unprecedented security operation with over 45,000 security agents.
And he says he hasn't needed to change plans, even after an assassination attempt on a former American president.
We stand with the flag to represent the millions of Palestinians around the world who have been silenced.
Palestinians are competing at this year's Games, so are Russians and Belarusians, though not officially for their country. Political doesn't mean violent. Adolf Hitler wanted to use the 1936 Games to herald his racist, fascist regime. Then Jesse Owens, a black man, won the 100-meter dash, infuriating Hitler. So as much as the Games are about competition, they're also about sending a message. Nathaniel Dove, Global News.
Welcome back. We end tonight with an incredible story of survival. A fishing vessel and its 7 crew went missing this week off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador, and hopes of finding them alive were fading fast.
When you were talking to people, it was just, it was like a doom, gloom, like a curse was put on the town.
The mayor of New West Valley says the 7 crew members are all from the small fishing town and surrounding area. Their boat went missing Wednesday night. Its last known location, 300 kilometers northeast of Gander. Search teams spent 2 days scouring the seas.
The biggest factor, I think, from the search would be the intense fog that we had.
The Coast Guard says there'd been a fire on board, which destroyed the boat and its radio equipment. The crew escaped onto a tiny life raft.
They were really lucky to get off and really lucky to get into the raft.
The crew only had 1 flare left, which was spotted by a rescue helicopter. The call came over the radio.
7 persons aboard the missing fishing vessel Elite Navigator has been located.
Their hometown erupted. The men made it safely to shore this afternoon, met by hundreds from the community.
There's no words out there that can describe how happy the whole community is. It's amazing. If there's such thing as a perfect ending, then this was a perfect ending.
And that's a perfect ending for us on this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is a different boat, the world's oldest intact passenger sternwheeler in Caslo, British Columbia. We love seeing Your Canada, so please keep emailing your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you back here again tomorrow. Have a great night.